اوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. All right, everyone, welcome. I have amazing Hana with me. Hey, Hana.
السلام عليكم.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So, yeah, these sessions, these videos are my favorite thing over the years. I've done a lot of them. The reason I really like them is because when I started, I didn't have a lot of, these kind of stories to connect with. There was biographies that I was reading from, like, people like Walt Disney and, Elon Musk and stuff, but, not people like that I could really relate to, like Muslims that have gone through similar
Mhm.
journeys. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons I really like this, because one of the messages I always get from people is like, hey, you know what? I can really relate to that person's story. And it's from
Mhm.
people that some of them never end up, working with us, but it has a real impact on them. So yeah, and so today I want to just talk a little bit about your journey with the Baraka Business School. And what I would like to do is, just before we kind of start at the beginning, like before we met, let's talk a little bit about where you are now, who you help. um so almost kind of give people like a preview of what's coming at the end of the journey.
Okay, inshallah. So Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hana to anyone who's watching. I am a trauma coach that works primarily with Muslim women. So I do one-on-one coaching, and I also run a trauma group coaching program, which is the only trauma group coaching program specific to Muslim women that combines elements of spiritual healing with science-based trauma healing and trauma integration. So that's what I do now. I work with women across the world. At this point, I think I've touched every continent, alhamdulillah. Um, and yeah, that's what I do. I'm also a content creator. A lot of my content is geared towards the work that I do. So creating content about healing spiritually, healing physically, in terms of releasing trauma from the body and healing subconsciously. What does it look like to have those mindset shifts, to do subconscious reprogramming, rewiring of the brain? So that's what I do.
Okay, inshallah. And yeah, around this video, and some people will listen to this on the podcast, we'll put some links to your channels.
Inshallah.
I recommend people to follow you on YouTube and Instagram. Um, cool. Thank you for sharing that. So let's go to the beginning. You know, um, I think you heard about me through a word of mouth, right? Where were you just before you had that conversation with me?
Yeah. So I had just launched the second cohort of my trauma group coaching program. I
Mhm.
wasn't doing one-on-one. It was just a trauma group coaching program. It had gone well, but I think I was at a point of thinking, do I want this to be a side kind of hobby, something small, or do I actually want to create a vision for this and making it into something much bigger? So I knew at the pace, the amount of effort and time that I was putting into the program and just running like the coaching business at that time, as compared to the results I was getting, there was just a huge mismatch. I couldn't, there's no way that I could sustain that level of effort and energy and time without the right systems. And I didn't know the systems. So the coaching, even coming into coaching, was something really like serendipitous for me. People ask me, how did you end up coaching? It's a weird story. I had a dream. I literally went to sleep and I had a dream that I was supposed to build something for Muslim women, and that this was supposed to be it. I was supposed to help Muslim women heal. And I woke up from that dream in the morning, and I said, okay, I guess this is what it's going to do. And I started drafting kind of my first outline of what my coaching business would look like. At that time, it was called Saddam Life. That's still what it's called, but most people know it by my name because it's a personal. It runs by my name. Um,
Mhm.
so I didn't really know how to put together a program. I didn't know how to coach. I didn't know who to turn to. I just had to be fearless. Put out my first program, and it went well. Put out the second cohort, it went well. and now is like, how do I actually turn this into something substantial? I had heard about you from another one of your clients who was a mentor and someone I did a lot of Islamic community work in the state that I grew up in. And so I reached out to that person and said, hey, tell me about this coach that you're working with. You mentioned you were doing a life coaching. They had left the country. So they were in the US, they left, moved overseas, and now we're doing coaching as a way to like sustain their living. So I was like, okay, so somebody's done it. Clearly, this is something you can do. Um, and your name was mentioned and the experience was mentioned. And it wasn't until almost a year later that I don't know what I was doing. I was sitting down at my laptop, like right here. And I was just like, this is starting to get frustrating. It's not something I'm enjoying. It's stressful. Who can I reach out to help? And then I remembered your name. And then I reached back out. And then I think I prayed, got up, prayed a Sahara, and immediately reached out to you.
Okay. Mashallah. I didn't know, by the way, about the dream.
Oh
It's
yeah.
an interesting way to.
It really is an interesting way, but it's just common for me. My husband, um, I had a dream about my husband and his name,
Mm,
and that was how I knew who it was supposed to be. SubhanAllah. It's a weird situation. So it happens very often, is what I like to say. I get dreams about things very often that end up being very good decisions.
Mashallah. Mashallah. Well, we can perhaps see that as like divine inspiration.
Mhm.
Okay, so so you've started your business, but it's kind of like a thing on the side. You don't have systems. What at that time, like, what were some of the problems you had?
So like I didn't have a clear kind of content marketing strategy. I didn't know how to position myself as kind of the expert that I was in this field. I would, get calls for or get bookings for discovery calls. People wouldn't show up. So I would have like 4 hours worth of calls booked, but one person would show up, which is a huge waste of time. It was hard to get people to commit, even though the pricing of the package was super, super low at that time. I mean, like you really, there's very little that you would have ever found at that level of value for that price. It was
Mm,
insane. Like, so, I just like it wasn't working. I didn't know how to create a proper brand messaging. I didn't know how to create the systems in place to make sure that things were moving seamlessly, how to have a conversation, a discovery call where I could actually confidently show up and show people what the program could do for them. The people that did say yes sometimes weren't putting in their best effort because the pricing wasn't matching that. People were skipping calls, showing up late, and then the results only reflect as much as you're willing to put in. I can give you the perfect system, and that's how I built my group program. But if you're not applying it, then it's like someone coming to a fitness coach saying, I want to get ripped and lose 20 pounds, then they just don't work out, or they show up halfway through the workout. They don't, they're not mindful of their macros and whatnot. So it's just disheartening because it's like I have something I think it can really, really help people, but I don't know how to just reach as many, women as I want to. And I don't know how to also do it in a way that doesn't burn me out.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good point. So you already created the program, you're already putting it out there, but it's just
Yeah.
not getting the results that you wanted, right?
Yeah.
And
The ladies were getting results, but it was not, it,
Mm,
it was too hard to get people into the program.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. So Alhamdulillah, the program was already good, but you were not, in terms of marketing and sales, not getting the results you wanted.
yeah.
Mm. Um, and I want to touch on this a bit more because, sometimes we see, sometimes we see someone join a program and they get amazing results and it looks like it's all about that. But mashallah, you have put a lot of work in. So, before you joined, right? You've tried a few cohorts. What are some things that you tried that didn't work? Um,
So, yeah. So I had, initially I had created, so I was trying to build my marketing on social media. So I had created an Instagram. The Instagram was not a personal brand. It was under like Sanem Life Coaching. And that didn't allow people to connect with me as a person, my story, my style, how I coach, what I know. So I ended up switching that over to just a kind of a personal brand with my name. But I didn't know how, again, how to touch, connect to people and their pain points and what they're struggling with. I had built a YouTube channel as well. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. I didn't know if I wanted that to be a separate thing where it was just kind of like I had a channel. So if coaching didn't work out, kind of one foot in, one foot out. And so I think that was huge. I didn't know how to frame discovery calls, how to create kind of that sense of how can this program really serve you? Yeah, I would say those. I didn't know how to create the systems that would be able to sustain one cohort after the other without it being exhausting and me doing everything.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
And I think that that's one of the things, right? Is often when things are not working, we start questioning ourselves and the value that we bring, but it's more often it's about the systems we have and looking at
Mm.
are those systems working? And now, alhamdulillah, the systems are very different systems that you have right now. So there's a question that I read in a book, and actually it's a really interesting question. I always bring it in these conversations because often, you know, I've invested a lot in myself, but often the moment before you make that investment, there's, sometimes we um, go through a feeling. So I just want to check in with you, like, was there for you like a moment of doubt or insecurity just before you made that investment in yourself?
In your program?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That was one of, yeah, it was an investment that at that time I wasn't working. So that was, that was the thing. I have the funds when I'm working, but this had to be it had to be a step in faith because I was like, either I invest this money or I don't. But like, what am I willing to risk? What am I willing to do? And then knowing that if I put the investment in, I'm all in. Like I'm gonna put in the work, I'm gonna put in the effort. So I had prayed istikhara, I'd made dua, and so I literally just said to myself, I made dua about this. I literally made dua, Ya Allah, allow me to return and make my return on an investment in like I think 3 months. I think that was my dua. And I made the dua. So if you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he promises to answer you, then would you not then move forward knowing that he's going to answer you? And even if it might not be in the way that you perceive or asked of him, you'll still, all du'as are answered in one of three ways, right? So I just said that to myself. I put the investment, I said Bismillah, and I made my return on investment in what, 2, 3 weeks? Do you remember? I don't remember. I think two,
Yeah,
three
I
weeks.
think I think it was quite quick.
Yeah, it was very good. Alhamdulillah. It's a good problem to have. Um, but that just speaks to the extent of how quickly you were able to coach me on the systems and building these, putting these things in place to be able to create that. And it's not just about the money. Like at the end of the day, I could make that money in different ways, right? But it's about you being able to achieve that return on investment means that people trusted you, trust your results, trust your process, and actually are benefiting enough to say, hey, this is worth it for me. And it just became like
Mm.
this kind of cycle, right? That as more women came in and made the investment and trusted and believed in themselves, they went through the system, they got the results, they were like so floored, alhamdulillah. This thing, I had clients who were coming in 2, 3 years of therapy. Like, how much money did they spend on that to say I feel stuck? I feel like it's doing nothing for me. I feel like I come in and I talk about what's wrong. Don't get me wrong, therapy is amazing, can be incredible for, particular issues, but they wanted something different. And I was able to offer that to them in 3 months, right? And then they become the walking testimonials, not just a written testimonial of what life looks like. They're having people saying something's different about you. You've changed in a good way. You seem more confident. You seem happier. You're less depressed. You're less anxious. You have stronger boundaries. You're not people pleasing. Other people are seeing this. They're seeing this. And then other women hear about their results and they're like, shoot, I want that. And it just keeps cycling, right? And then my Instagram's growing because people are seeing the value and I'm putting out, content in a way that you described. I remember you mentioned you're like, there's content to inspire, there's content to educate. So, creating systems of like content creation, it all shifted, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I think that part is really important because And for me, it's always been around creating some quick wins just to boost that confidence.
Motivate you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, Masha, you did that very quickly. And I love what you shared there around, obviously you use those, alhamdulillah, you already had a program that's good. And that's really important because, at the core of any, I think, really successful coaching business, in the middle is having a really good product. And that, I think,
Yeah.
almost like accelerated everything else, that amplified everything else. And I love how you used, the stories of people that were doing well to just attract more people.
Mhm.
Mashallah. Um, all right, good. Yeah, I know you mentioned like you get quite quickly results. What was yeah, what was the moment when you realized like, okay, this is working for me? Like, um,
So working as in like the system was working or what particularly?
yeah, so yeah, I think one of the things with yourself is you implement things very quickly. And so
I have my answer. I think I said this in the coaching to the group like 5 times. Um, my thing is how can I achieve the result I want with the least amount of effort? As
mm,
in not having to sit there for 10, 20 hours doing admin, right, to get it. And when I was able to simplify it, like the system of, okay, this is a part that I put towards marketing. This is a part that I put towards like serving my clients, making sure they're getting great results, not just in the program, but outside the program, reaching out to them throughout the week, seeing how they're doing. Then like this is the admin side of things that, the emails have to be answered, the financial documents have to be updated, the contracts you have to make sure are signed, all of it, the graphics that need to be designed. Um, when I was able to cut that down and the amount of hours were going down and the bulk of my time was being spent coaching, I was like, okay, I like this. This is sustainable.
mm,
And the biggest thing was your piece of advice to hire a virtual assistant, which I never would have thought to do, who takes off like 10 hours of my week,
mashallah,
right?
yeah. Mm,
Taking care of, she takes care of posting for YouTube. She takes care of outreach, following up on waiting lists. And, when the cohort was closed and there was a waiting list, following up on inquiries on the waiting list, reaching out to people for, collaborations if they want to come on my channel, posting things on school. Like she takes care of so much that I would go crazy if I had to take care of.
yeah. Let me slow down a bit on that because
Mm,
that in itself, honestly, I think is the questions we ask ourselves is so important, right? And that's a really powerful question that I know that you've kept repeating again and again. How can I get
how
the
do I?
most results with least effort? And
And by least, I feel like I have to, in case people are watching, they're like, what is this girl saying? I practice medicine. I studied medicine. I know how to put effort into things. When I say least effort, I mean least time being consumed. The
yeah.
bulk of my energy and effort I want to go to my
Mm,
clients. I don't want it to go to drafting an email. I don't want it to go to figuring out how to post something on YouTube or how to use this software. I don't want that.
mm,
That's too much time and energy that could be used to actually serve people. So.
yeah. Well, that's interesting, right? Because some people don't know you on the outside. It might look like, wow, she's like all the time on social media. Like I can see her stories, I can see her posts, I can see her,
Mm.
her YouTube stuff. But you created a really good system, and ultimately that's what we get rewarded for, right? It's not the time that we put in, but it's
Impact.
yeah, it's the impact, right? That's very good, mashallah. And I think that is, the VA, I think is also really useful because
Yeah.
what happened in my journey is, I got full practice, but because I didn't hire a VA, my marketing kind of stopped, right?
Mhm.
And I just got overwhelmed with all the clients. But mashallah, you kind of bought back some of your time and
Mhm.
you were able to delegate some of that. Maybe tell us a little bit about that. Did that go quite easily for you, like hiring someone and delegating to someone else?
I had made dua. I can still remember where I was. This is another thing which is why I specifically wanted to work with the Muslim coaches, because like that element of barakah is so important. So big decisions I didn't make without praying or making dua about it. Like I wanted it to be this constant. I wanted a constant flow of barakah in the work that I was doing. May Allah always keep it like that. So I made dua, ya Allah, bring me the people that are going to help me. Um, and that was, I got an email from someone saying, hey, I'm a virtual assistant and this is what I do. And I said, look at that. I had gotten reached out to by several VAs before then. I didn't even look because I wasn't even thinking. But at that time, Allah brought her to me, and she's great. She does such an amazing job. So it was a very easy process. Had I not known, if she had not reached out to, I had people who had reached out to me on Instagram, or you could, there are plenty of like, on Fiverr, not Fiverr, Upwork,
Mm.
freelancers and VAs who kind of already have the skills, and I could have found them there in case someone's trying to figure out where to find them.
Yeah, mashallah. And I think this is like a superpower that often is underused. You're always asking Allah for what you need. Mashallah. All right, so let's look at I mean, one of the things, I knew you're doing well, right? But in one of our recent conversations, you shared, you know, um, you shared you got a waiting list, right? So,
Mhm.
alhamdulillah, as things start, you know, uh, you've been quite quick to implement, mashallah. You filled up a few cohorts. Um, yeah, so tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a bit maybe about the success that you created, and then I would love for you to share a little bit about the waiting list, because that's not something that's ordinary. Because I mean, most coaches are struggling so much to even just have a full
Get
practice.
one or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue is like you have to be willing to play the long game. So
Mm.
2021 is when I had that dream and started the business, right?
Mm.
2023 is when I launched my first, what's it, 2023 is when I launched my first cohort. 2021 and 2022, I was doing other things. I was like creating content and kind of contracting myself out to organizations to do trauma kind of related work. But that long game is a big thing. So anytime I started something, I started it without never anticipating immediate results. So when I did the YouTube, I knew, okay, I'm committing to this for a year minimum.
Mm.
Most people will quit within the first month because YouTube is difficult. Same thing with Instagram. I'm committing to this for 6 months. Like I would give myself this prolonged time to commit and then see what happens. And as you do that, especially, and there was something you had said that was always like, what went well, what didn't. This idea of look at what is actually driving your results, analyze it, like take time to actually reflect and analyze it, and then do that again. And it just keeps maxing out. So, oh, when people saw a testimonial, that made that a lot for more bookings. Oh, when I was doing live coaching, that got people, to feel comfortable and they wanted to book or they want to answer questions. When I started creating content specifically on YouTube, I gave people a whole library of content to consume where they can get to know about trauma, about the Islamic, side of it. What I do, get to know my style, my sense, the personality of your coach is very important. Like you have to mesh with them. Um, and so as I was doing it, it was just like this 1 hour I was putting into content creation ends up creating, bringing in 3 clients, which is now that's 12, 24, 36 hours of work that I get to do with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. I like that. I think what seems like an overnight success is started in 2021.
Nope.
20.
Yeah. And the amount of time that was put in building the initial foundations
Mm.
was 20, 30, 40 hours sometimes. I know it sounds crazy because you hear like, what the heck are you doing for 20, 30, 40 hours? But the level of intention that went into the group program, the amount of like research, oh my God, if you want to succeed on certain platforms, YouTube especially, there is a system that unless you are willing to like pay for a YouTube coach, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time figuring it out. And I spent a lot of that time, building those foundations, trying, experimenting, seeing things they fall apart, going back. And one thing that I always told myself was like, don't, the fear right before a big decision, I always felt that, but I always knew it's on the other side of that fear was success. Like on the other side of that fear was, okay, either this is going to work really well, or it's going to point me in the direction of the other thing that's going to work. Even the idea of like, hiring a VA. I remember I was so like nervous about it because what if they don't do well? What if they end up causing issues? What if it causes me more work? Then I didn't. And I'm like, how could I ever do that? Hiring someone to take on discovery calls for me, because at that point, these discovery calls were taking up time. When I had so many clients who wanted coaching, I couldn't do discovery calls. I was so afraid to do that. I think you remember how in my head I was, until I was like, what's the worst that can happen? If they fall apart, I come right back in and I take it over. If they miss, if they mess up a discovery call, or they miss a call or whatever it is, and someone, ends up not doing coaching, they were not a part of that like Allah never intended them for that program.
Mm.
Someone who says no, I just see it as they weren't, this program wasn't their risk, and they weren't mine. Like as a client, it's cool, no problem. Like at the end of the day, you're gonna get yours. And I think that mindset is huge, because I was just I was looking through my CRM, and like, you following up and seeing who's interested. And I was like, subhanAllah, I mark people as orange if they're a good fit, but it wasn't the right time for them. Then green if they said yes. And I looked and I was like, look at how much orange there is. Then you
Mhm.
see these little pops of green. And I was just like, perhaps it was a blinders Allah put on me. Because if I was just starting and I saw all this orange, I'd feel so dejected and be like, wow, how many people said no? But then I see the greens and I'm like, but this person, like what we were able to achieve with them and what she was able to do, and like the lives that were changed, that the oranges feel like nothing.
Inshallah. Yeah, I think that's really important. Is I always say this in our work, is success 80% psychology and your mindset. And I think this is one of the things that keeps showing up, mashallah, is like you're not like different than anyone else. You feel afraid, but then you're taking small steps forward,
Yeah.
right? I think it takes courage. It takes courage to put yourself out there, right?
Oh my God. Don't remind me. Sometimes I sit there and I'm like, oh Lord. Yeah, it's a lot of mindset work. People don't realize how important the mindset work is,
Mhm.
when you're doing a people-centered business, especially, because
Mhm.
people will rip you apart. I can't tell how many times do I get therapists commenting like rude things, or I remember Subhan, I had a client who, she started working with me. We were able to integrate some of the most horribly traumatic experiences for her. Like level 8, 9, she's sobbing if she talks about them, and we get her down to a 0. Okay, amazing, amazing work. And we're doing this in 10 weeks. She like, just seeing the difference when she first started and where she is now is amazing. She had asked me when to start, like if she wanted to do therapy, when should she start? I said, give it a few weeks to get a sense of how coaching goes. That way you don't dive into two things at once, and if this is an adjunct you need. She ended up jumping into therapy. I think she wanted like more of the talking based thing. She's still working with me. And she mentioned to the therapist, I'm working with a trauma coach, and the therapist goes, what's a trauma coach? And I was like, how rude. But that's the reality of it, right? People don't see me and know that like I have experience in psychiatry. People don't know my continuing medical education was in trauma, complex PTSD and trauma based methods. People, they don't know the work, the decade long community organizing work where I was putting together programs for Muslims. Like they don't know the Islamic education I have. They don't know these things. When you're doing a people-centered business, you have to have thick skin, because people will come at you and they'll say, why do you think you can do it? Right. Instead of saying, oh, you were able to achieve those results, can you teach me? Because I've had a few therapists that reached out and they were like, do you do mentoring? And I was like, you're going to get ripped apart if you try to get mentoring from a coach, but let's talk about it. Yeah. So it's a very interesting, very interesting experience sometimes.
Mm. No, I'm glad you shared that, because I think while everything, I don't want to take anything away from, mashallah, the amazing work you do in terms of, social media, because your social media is really good. It's very clear that you've studied it, you've looked at how it works, you have a system that works in terms of YouTube and Instagram. But I think, like, especially what I'm getting more and more from this conversation is that um, you've put years, well, over a decade into your craft, into
Yeah.
your ability to help people, right?
Mhm.
And that's so important because I used to hear about this. Um, my coach at that time, Steve Chandler, he said like one of the most important books is this book by Carl Newport called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And I remember
Mhm.
like it's a really thick book. I just put the book on my shelf and I could just see the cover. And I said,
Mhm.
focus on that. When you become really, really good, people can't ignore you. And that's what I'm getting from you here, mashallah. Is of course, if you're really good and nobody knows about you, that's not gonna work. But you've worked on yourself again, like over the years, and then you start putting yourself out there and you're creating a lot of value through your free content.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, as you say, the time put into the craft, the program was redesigned 4 times. Like people don't know this. Like after each cohort, I would go in and I would say what worked, what didn't, what can I take out, what do I want to emphasize, right? Because obviously people, coming in with different different impact, I would see, oh, this specific module really was amazing. Let's make it into 2 modules.
Mm.
Let's expand on it. Oh, this didn't do much. It's just a filler. Let's remove it. And it took that's hours of unpaid labor to do that, to sit there and think about it. But it just made things more and more potent. Like the results were just more and more potent for each consecutive cohort because they kept getting the better and better version of the work. Like that refinement is really important. You have to be willing. I think sometimes people see like entrepreneurship and, coaching as an easy way out. But if you're bogus, people are not, first of all, no one's going to pay you. Like no one's going to pay to work with you. That's still their hard-earned time and money. So they just won't work with you. Or people are going to call your bluff where you're posting and saying you can do this, but the results aren't reflecting it. So you have to be willing to put
Yeah.
in that time, that refinement, not just for your program, but for yourself as well. I think you mentioned like the importance of, investing in yourself. And if I'm asking people to, give me 3 months and be present and show up and do the work, even when they're feeling sad or they're feeling anxious or distressed, to reach out, I need to be willing to do that too.
Yeah, mashallah. Okay, tell us a little bit more about, what shifted for you, like, as the problems that you had before, like you mentioned, there's no systems. Well, what shifted for you during the program? And
So you were the one who told me to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, and what happened as a result of that?
Yeah. Okay. So discovery calls, you shared a system for how to, Allahumma salli Muhammad, how to have the discovery call that completely changed the trajectory of those calls. Like people were just yesing left and right. Um, you gave so many principles that I had to figure out how to apply that were like super helpful. So for example, when the idea of like, look at what other people are doing, and if it's going well for them, like make that your own kind of thing. The idea of like steal like an artist, which every person in business has this to an element. All marketing is stealing like an artist, but looking at like that helped so much because I was able to identify best practices in like the coaching industry. I then make that my own as a Muslim coach, right? Which is a very particular niche, and then a trauma coach. So that was huge. You were the one who told me to do Instagram. I don't know if you remember that. And Instagram is now where 50% of my clients come from. So subhanAllah, ended up, no, I was not intending to do Instagram. I was going to focus on you. You were the one who suggested to like leave TikTok. So I dropped TikTok and it was the best decision ever. I can't stand TikTok. People are
Mm.
just not serious. It's so hostile. It is not a place that you're going to find your ideal clients, the people who you really want to work with, who want to work on themselves. What else? Your systems, the templates that you provided, the like strategies you provided made designing the program so much easier. Keeping track of who it is that you're coaching, the conversations you're having, keeping track of like all of the legal things you have to keep track of, the contracts, the finances. I didn't have a system for that. And then that made things much easier, especially come tax season. What else? What else? What else? You had recommended starting a digital community. Yeah,
Let's slow down for a moment there, because you know, I think maybe some people are listening and they're like, okay,
this is a lot.
well,
Yeah.
quite a few things there, but one of the things that I want people to really get from this is like we haven't just been focused on like, oh, let's just make money, let's just do marketing, get results, right?
Mm,
You know, one of the things we looked at, for example, is having some systems for finances, because one thing to make
yeah.
money, but then we have to manage it in the right way. Obviously,
Yeah.
mashallah, I think you're quite good already at saving, but it's just having a little system for business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They don't teach you this stuff in school. And also people have to realize this happened over 6 months. Like
Mm,
it's easy to hear, oh, YouTube and Instagram and all of these things, but these were things were happening little by little. Like the group session would happen. I take that, I'd say, okay, what can I do this week? And I'd apply that. And then, okay, this is what happened. Bring it back to you. You'd give tweaks and suggestions. And it was this constant back and forth of like, here's what I implemented. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. Here are things we're going to shed and get rid of because it doesn't serve the,
yeah.
the purpose of the coaching or what you're trying to do. Here are things to add because it's going to make your life so much easier. And all of this culminating over 6 months to turn what was in horrible chaos into like into this masterpiece of what looks like very systematized, and it is alhamdulillah.
Yeah, no, mashallah. No, honestly, like I think, this is a thing like important to point out, right? Like, it's for me, like in the past was really frustrating is when a business program is just like, this is all you have to do. Like everyone has to do a webinar funnel or something. And
Mm,
for me, like what I like to do is just to look at where are your ideal clients. And I think we had a conversation about that. And like, hey, I think, well, they're probably on Instagram, right?
mm,
But here's the thing, you didn't just say, well, okay, I'm gonna go on Instagram. Again, you found a system that works there, right?
yeah.
You studied it and you made it work. And I
Mm,
think that's a really important mindset, mashallah, that you brought is, I think is one thing to use platforms, right? Because I remember, subhanAllah, like one sister came and in the discovery call, she shared her Instagram page and she had like 100,000 followers, but she wasn't making any money, right?
mm,
So I think it's just want to point that out. It's that, it's not just about using a platform. It's not just about even the amount of followers, because a lot of times we think, "Oh, I wish I had more followers because I make more money."
mm,
It's about really knowing what to do and how to do it.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and also for people who are not like interested in social media, knowing, I remember you had said like there are people who run an entire coaching business with a website and a Google Doc, like
Mm,
no, no social media whatsoever. So that, right. Or there are people who run their, coaching business with, they use one platform only and they don't show their face. It is a completely faceless, right? So it's always this, let's bend things to what is most comfortable for you. And so
mm,
for me, I was comfortable putting in, because I'd already seen what can happen if you're willing to put in the time to build up your platforms and like do that early on. And I wanted leverage. That was my biggest leverage. I wanted to be able to get to a point where lost, I don't, you put something up on YouTube, it's there for years, and someone 2 years later can come across your video and feel touched by it and feel seen and heard. And I would have people saying like, I implemented the things you said, and I'm not looking for coaching, but like my this particular issue is gone, or it's so much better.
yeah.
So it was that was, you kept saying asset, build your assets, whether it's your freebies, it's your ebook. So I ended up, I had an ebook. I ended up doing a webinar on my Instagram is a major asset. Every single story and every single reel and every single post, YouTube, my website, like all of these assets that were built over time, but with this refinement of, okay, here's how you actually do it as a coach, like with intentionality, and here's how you do it with sincerity. So you're not sitting there just chasing every dollar. You're looking to actually serve people and get results and bring that barakah in.
Yeah, mashallah. And it's interesting you said that I start smiling is because I remember me mentioning this in a call, and I think next week the ebook was already out, and the week after that the webinar was already out.
So the ebook was actually, that was my first one, but it was a webinar. So I had created the first webinar, and then I ended up redoing it actually like several months later, which once again, it's a reminder, like you have to be willing to come back to things and tweak and refine. So I ditched the old webinar and I cut it down to 25 minutes. So to make it, what is like the very basic of what people need to know.
Mm,
That's going to be like profoundly life-changing for them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the important thing, right? Like, alhamdulillah, there's two things here. One is, mashallah, you created things that add value, and at the same time, you also learned how to use them, right? Because
Mm,
you've used these assets also to start a lot of conversations.
mm,
I think one of your, quite a few of your Instagram posts have gone viral, and alhamdulillah, that's allowed you to have a lot of conversation, allowed you to create more interest in your work, right? Um, yeah, like what so you know yeah we were talking a little bit about the wait list, right? So alhamdulillah, you filled up quite a few cohorts, right, in our time together.
mm.
Tell me a little bit about you know the wait list that you created.
Yeah. So like I was doing the discovery calls and I was running the cohort. So when a cohort, which is 3 months long, the program is 3 months long, was going on, I didn't always have the time to have like these discovery call bookings, especially with the number of people that would want to book. So I ended up in that time creating a wait list, which I forgot how many people. I ended up being like 40 people for one-on-one, 40 people for the Seeking Wholeness Trauma Group coaching program. And that allowed there to be something to kind of catch the interest of people. So when an opportunity to work with me was open, I could reach back out to them instead of kind of sitting there and having to remarket all over again. Now, alhamdulillah, I have a system where we can continue to have discovery calls and someone else is taking over that.
Yeah,
And it makes it a little easier. So even if not everyone on the waiting list responds, at the very least, you know, 10%, 20%, 30% might respond, and you don't lose you don't lose that opportunity.
yeah, alhamdulillah. And again, just to like I think I like what you did there is you didn't overcomplicate it. You just
Mm,
simplified it. I think you created a spreadsheet, right? And you just keeping track
mm,
of people on the waiting list. Um, and I think this is maybe like the thing I see with yourself is again, the reason I want to just pick up these things and share them is because I want people to really hear that, you don't have to follow one specific system. I think I
mm,
recommended like a system for CRM for to keep track of kind of like your sales pipeline. And I remember you later sharing that you spreadsheet. I was like, huh? How did she do that? But you use something that and you made it work for you.
mm. Yeah, yeah. No, I still refuse to use a traditional CRM. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. All right, Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I think this has been really, it's been really valuable. Thank you for sharing your journey. Um, is there anything that I don't actually know. Like I know you've done mashallah, um you've done a lot of like you've invested a lot in yourself in terms of courses. You found out how other things work. Um sorry, I'm
I
losing
know.
my voice. By the way, I'll put a disclaimer. This is not my normal voice. So, um,
I'm sure they caught that in the beginning.
um, no, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to leave people with? Um, yeah, if they're listening to this, and we'll make sure, of course, we'll also put some links to your work. And honestly, like I don't. I don't say this like about every single person that I work with. Like highly recommend your work, mashallah. I've seen a lot of your testimonials,
Oh, God, love you.
you know, your videos on YouTube. You know, they're good. They're really good. And the stuff you put up on Instagram. So anyone that wants to just see something that works really well, because sometimes we see people that have a lot of followers or a lot of subscribers, but I can tell you, I've spoken to a lot of people with big followers and they come to me and they're like, please help me. I'm not making any money. So yeah, look at what Hannah's doing. You know, number one, you're creating a lot of credible content, but there's also a system that works. Is there anything else that you want to close with?
Yeah. If any of the people watching this are Muslim women who want to heal from trauma, please feel free to reach out. It's important for your business. It actually it will, because it actually is, because it will deeply affect your ability to show up for your work if you're not doing the healing work. But I would say, I forgot, there was like a stat that I had come across where it was like, of the people who become a coach, only like 2%, 5% will make any meaningful wage from it.
Hmm,
Um, and people do coaching, as a call to want to serve people, but they're also doing it largely hoping that it'll replace the work that they do right now.
yeah.
Right. So that's a very tiny, tiny percentage of people. And most people are going to fail very quickly. Like most people will try it for maybe a few months, a year, and then never touch it again. Because it's not as simple as you have something great to offer, and then people are going to run to you. You have to be willing to be hungry for the growth, like hungry for the growth, the systems. You have to be willing to put in the time. Um, and it can be as minimal or as maximal as you want, but I think the most valuable thing about working with a business coach who has done this, who has the testimonials, who has the evidence in their own work, is specifically someone like you, is you realize there's such a multifaceted approach to building a business. So if you are so uncomfortable with this, there's something you can do. And if you love this thing, there's a way you can take it. And as long as you're willing to come to that and be like, okay, this is what I'm good with, this is what I'm not okay with, and build a system and just be hungry, you're going to find a solution. The solution is always there. Sometimes, you know, uh so Wash, as an example, you don't do like Instagram in the way that I do it. But when you mentioned Instagram, all that meant to me was, okay, find the people who do and start figuring it out. And you gave me the principles and I ran with that. And it was just like a try, experiment, fail a little bit, be okay with it. You're not a failure. There's many more months, inshallah, and years of you trying something new to succeed. You'll be fine. If there's a short, month where not many people are inquiring for coaching, all I think is, okay, what's wrong with my system? Do I need to try something? What did I stop doing that used to work in the past? And usually I'll figure it out. Oh, I stopped posting about the testimonials. Oh, I stopped using call to actions. Oh, I wasn't as inviting. When people would like DM, I wasn't inviting them to hop on a call. I wasn't letting them know where they could get more information. Um, I forgot to track people. So I was, there were people inquiring, but I just forgot their name and can't find their DM anymore. So
Mashallah. Yeah, but thank you so much. I think there's so much people can take away from this. And again, I would love to see from people, wherever you're listening to, share your biggest takeaways in the chat, inshallah. And I love that you share that statistic. I think, it is unfortunately like,
everyone wants to be a coach. Not everyone's going to
yeah,
succeed.
I think it's the barrier to become a coach is so low now because anyone can do a
Mm,
course, and there's lots of great coaching schools. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of great business coaching schools, and we want to turn that around. We want to help people, inshallah,
yeah.
really like create a full-time income. But the most important thing is through that they help others, and
Yeah.
you're a great example of that. Um,
You
yeah.
know what I just remembered, SubhanAllah, the first conversation we had, you asked me like what my goal was financially. You're a business coach, so I preface this because I don't want people to think like, oh, someone's in mental health coaching and all they care about is money. That's not. You're a business coach, so that's an important measure. And I told you the number, and I think I said, I don't know if this is possible, but this is what I would want. And then we knocked it out like within 6 months. Subhanallah. And I just looked back at it and I was like, what? Like this thing that seemed so impossible ended up becoming a reality. Obviously through the barakah and blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but through the systems. Like I just didn't have the skills. I just didn't have the systems.
Mm. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, I think, that's the thing, right? Like we need to set a target and then inshallah do our part. Tie your camel, put your trust in Allah. Yeah. So just to wrap up, I'd love to hear people's takeaways. Also, just share one action. Like whatever small action you can take, just share that small action because that's inshallah how you can grow your business. And I pray that this session was beneficial to you, for you, and I pray that Allah continues to put barakah in your business, Hana. Thank you so much for sharing
How
your
are they going to reach out to you?
Hmm?
How do they reach out to you?
question. Well, inshallah, around this video podcast, we'll put like a link. Inshallah, there's a little application form, and yeah, go through that, and then you can have a conversation with us. Um, cool. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Barakallahu
Um,
feekum.
yeah, inshallah, we're gonna speak with each other soon. For everyone else, inshallah, see you on in another episode. Assalamu alaikum.